Imagine a person who is clearly drowning. Deadlines are piling up, their eyes are exhausted, and they are barely holding it together. When you ask them if they need a hand, they offer a practiced smile and say, "I'm fine, I've got it." If that description feels uncomfortably familiar, you might be that person. You probably felt a small tightening in your chest just now, the specific kind of tension that arises when a truth you've been quietly managing for years is finally spoken out loud. Somewhere along the way, you learned a very specific and painful lesson, that needing people is dangerous. There is a common assumption that people who never ask for help are just proud, stubborn, or even a little arrogant. While that might be true for a small minority, for the vast majority of people who genuinely struggle to reach out, it is much deeper than pride. It is a survival strategy, an adaptation that worked once upon a time, but never got updated. Think back to your younger self. At some point, you reached out. You showed someone you were struggling, and you were met with something other than support. Maybe they were dismissed, maybe they got frustrated, or maybe they were simply unavailable, physically or emotionally. Your nervous system, which is extraordinarily good at pattern recognition, logged that experience. It learned that needing people leads to disappointment, or worse, rejection. So you adapted. You decided that if they couldn't help you, you would help yourself. You became the capable one, the one who figures it out, the one who doesn't make other people uncomfortable with their needs. The sad reality is that this adaptation probably served you incredibly well for a long time. It made you resilient, independent, and reliable. But what catches many off guard is that the inability to ask for help becomes more than just a behavior. It becomes woven into your identity. Researchers have actually studied this phenomenon. A 2008 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology by Flynn and Lake found that people dramatically underestimate how willing others are to help them, by almost 50% in some experiments. We walk around genuinely believing that asking for help is a massive burden, when in reality, most people are more than happy to contribute. Even knowing that statistic doesn't make it easier to ask. This is because there is an emotional barrier rather than an informational one. When you've spent decades building an identity around self-sufficiency, asking for help doesn't feel like a simple transaction. It feels like a threat to who you are. It feels as though if you admit you can't handle something, the entire image of the competent, reliable person will collapse. So instead of reaching out, you run on fumes. You stay up too late solving problems alone that a 5-minute conversation could have resolved. You tell yourself you'll ask when things get really bad, but really bad keeps getting redefined because your threshold for suffering quietly just keeps rising. The cruelest part of this cycle is that the more competent you become, the more invisible your struggle becomes to those around you. People stop checking in because you always seem fine. You have trained them to believe that you never need anything. This creates a specific and often painful dynamic in relationships, whether they are romantic, friendships, or family. People who can't ask for help often give a great deal. Giving feels safe. It keeps the power balanced in a way that feels manageable. If I am the one helping you, I am not vulnerable. I am needed. And for some, being needed is the closest thing to secure attachment they have ever known. However, this creates an invisible ledger. Over time, the relationship becomes lopsided. The giver begins to feel unseen, and the receiver might feel vaguely guilty without knowing why. Yet the giver can't say anything because asking for more feels impossible. They either begin to quietly resent the other person, or they quietly leave the relationship entirely. If you are nodding along to this, feeling frustrated because you've known this about yourself for years, and yet nothing has changed, understand that knowing why you do something doesn't automatically change it. That is how deep conditioning works. However, insight is the beginning of change. John Bowlby, whose attachment theory is foundational to modern psychology, documented how early relational experiences create internal working models.
These are mental templates for how relationships work, what we can expect from others, and whether our needs are worth meeting. These models run in the background and are remarkably resistant to simple logic. Telling yourself it's irrational not to ask for help is about as effective as telling someone with a fear of heights that falling is statistically unlikely. The rational mind knows, but the nervous system simply doesn't care. What actually starts to move the needle is something gradual. It's not a single breakthrough moment. It's the repeated experience of asking for something small and surviving it. It's the realization that when you asked, the person didn't pull away and they weren't burdened. It's the realization that you were still whole after being seen as someone who needed something. This process also involves grief. Many people who never ask for help are carrying a grief they haven't named for a younger version of themselves who did ask and wasn't met. Until that is acknowledged in the body and not just the mind, the old strategy will stick around. That strategy was protecting a younger version of you. It needs to be thanked for its service before it can step aside. The identity piece is enormous. When "I handle things myself" has been the foundation of your self-worth for 30 years, dismantling it feels like losing yourself. But you're not losing yourself. You're rebuilding with better materials. You're incorporating the radical, difficult idea that your needs are not a burden. You are learning that depending on people is not a weakness, and that the capacity to receive is just as mature as the capacity to give. Most of us were never taught that, and you cannot learn what was never shown to you. Picture yourself at work. You've taken on more than you can handle, and a colleague notices. They stop by and ask if they can take something off your plate. Instead of relief, you feel a flash of panic or even offense. You say, "No, I'm good, thanks," and then spend the next 4 hours resenting the workload while feeling oddly proud that you didn't accept the help. That night, you feel exhausted and hollow. It isn't about productivity, it's about the story you are living inside of. A story that says accepting help means you were a failure. If you felt the particular ache of being described today, remember this: the strength you developed by doing everything alone is real, and it got you here, but it was always meant to be a bridge, not a destination. You were not built to carry everything alone. Nobody is. The people in your life who would show up for you do exist. You've just been so good at not needing them that they don't know you're struggling. That isn't their failure, and it isn't yours. It is simply the next thing to work on.